All right. Well, welcome everybody. So I was on Josh's call. What was it, last week, I think? And he was talking about some amazing things. And I'm like, do you know who needs to hear these amazing things? You people. So I asked him if he would come on, talk about it, about PropStream, a couple other things that he just has going on, and he was awesome enough to come on. So Josh, I will let you take over.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. So I thought I would share how I am using PropStream with our CRM platform, which most of you, like you don't have to necessarily use what I'm using for that, but just how I'm marrying the two to find data, mostly homeowners, that we're either I'm going to cover like three buckets today of common uses of data that we're pulling, and then what we do with the data, right, to turn it into hopefully appointments and potential listings or clients in some way, shape, or form. So I guess my point is I'm going to show you a data source and a CRM, but it's the ideas, right, that are more important than anything, right? Like if you have a data source that you're using, if you've got a CRM that you love, you don't have to use the stack that I'm going to share today. Okay. So the data source, the data provider, is one called PropStream. I have been using them for I don't know, over 3 years, I think. And if it's okay with you, Carrie, I'm going to drop this. This is just a Google Doc with kind of my tech stack. And for
Yeah.
anyone that would want to get a free trial with PropStream, they can go here, or you can just go to growwithjosh.com/PS for PropStream. So again, there's lots of data providers. I like it. They continue to improve and evolve it. You can filter a bunch of different ways. And I just find it to be user friendly. I like that I can skip trace data right in here. I like that it scrubs the DNC because depending on the data, the type of data, we don't want to be breaking the DNC rules. So there's lots of things that I love about it, but the three big buckets of how I'm using this currently are it's always to build a list, right? So it's like, okay, what am I building a list for today? So I'll give you some recent use cases, and specifically, I'm picking several that have already created another opportunity for me. Okay, so whether it is a preliminary call or an opportunity of some way, shape, or form. Okay, so I think I'll start with pre-foreclosures. Pre-foreclosures. Okay, it can be a little bit messy. I think you got to be careful how you approach these. But I had a Zoom call this morning with a pre-foreclosure lead that I chatted with yesterday, got him some preliminary offers on the property, did a Zoom, and he actually wants to at least preliminarily proceed with one of those options. And
That's
it
awesome.
it came from data that I pulled here, and then utilizing some follow-up sequences and some unique offerings to get that. So when you're in here, you can search by county, city, or zip code or codes. You can you can even search for specific properties, but that actually I'll hit on something that I do use this for specific properties at the end. Just don't let me forget. So I'm going to pop in. I haven't searched this one in a while. I'm in Central PA, by the way. I live in Cumberland County. I do business in York, Dauphin, Cumberland, Perry, and even the surrounding, like Adams, Franklin, Lebanon, Lancaster. It's a rural area. We can get places quickly and easily. Some of you may be in the more densely populated areas where it takes you a long time to get here or there, but I can cover like a 45-mile radius pretty easily here in rural central Pennsylvania. So I've pulled up York County, and then I'm going to go to filters. I'm going to go MLS. The first thing I always do is I want to make sure that we're not soliciting on-market properties. Now, this is not foolproof. It's not 100% flawless. Okay. And if you know, I just ask for forgiveness. This actually came up the other day. Somebody, an agent said, "Hey, you know, were you intentionally reaching out to my listing?" I said, "Listen, according to our records, the listing had expired and not been renewed, right? Certainly not." And I could show that person, in this case, I was pulling a list like this, that I wasn't trying to solicit their listing. Okay. So the first thing I always start with is not on market. And I'm going to look for single family properties. Okay. So single family properties that are in York County that are in pre-foreclosure status. And so for pre-foreclosure, I can go to what they call their quick list choices, and I can choose pre-foreclosures. And hopefully this spinny wheel will cooperate with me here. I thought it was spinning because it was waiting for more criteria. All right, let me refresh it here.
I was gonna say, as you know, everything when we're on Zoom, extra slow.
Yeah, it never fails, never fails. All right, let's try one more time. So I'm going to go York. This is actually not the worst thing in the world because it does take some time to play around with the filtering. So I'm going to go York County. We're going to go not on market. We're going to go property characteristics. I want single family homes and I want pre-foreclosures. So I've got 149. It's a pretty decent, you know, little targeted list there.
Yeah.
And one thing I like to check is the auction date. Now, a lot of times the auction is stayed, right? So, but I want to see, are most of the dates in the future? Okay, so I actually did this for the county to my north, a rural county in Perry County, and all the auction dates were like early October or September. So I'm going to come back and check that list again in a couple of weeks to see if it's refreshed because I want like better data. This looks pretty promising. This looks pretty promising. So much so that I was going to demo and maybe like not actually pay for the data and stuff. But I'm actually you're going to see soup to nuts how we actually get the data here because this is pretty good. So I've got 149 listings. Now I could also go back here and play with some other filters to ensure that, or to get a better idea if this is somebody that we can actually help. Here's what I mean by that. I could go to value and equity info, right? Because if they're in foreclosure and they have zero equity, not a whole lot we can do, right? I mean, maybe, but you know, we want to. I would rather spend more time and go deeper with a smaller group of people than try and go real wide and waste a bunch of time with folks that unfortunately, you know, let's face it, some of these folks are just beyond the point of us being able to help them, right? So what I could do here, and I'll probably actually do this, so I can stop speaking in theories, is I can go here under value and equity info and say I want them to have at least 20% equity. Because with 20%, I've got more options. Now, maybe you're in an area where there's like tons of, you know, it's very densely populated and there's lots of data. You might go 50%. Or you might go 40%. Like I'm not saying this is the right or wrong answer. That's just for me on the average home price in my market and for the options that I can offer them, 20%, there's usually some options there. So I'd actually narrowed down my list a little bit to 127. I'm happy with that list. I try to on any of these buckets that I'm going to walk you through or like audience list types. Usually I'm looking for 100, 200 or 300 at the most that I want to work through because you know, again, because I'd rather go deeper with a smaller group of people than just try and go wide and cast like this huge net. So I'm going to select all these and I'm going to hit add to list. Now, if you go and get a free trial, during the free trial period, you can only save 50 properties. Okay, so that's one of the limitations to the trial period. So I just want to be transparent with that. However, one of the icon agents in my organization, the first time I showed him this on the free trial, he saved 37 properties and got 3 listings from that 37. Cannot guarantee that, right? in any way, shape, or form. But my point is, you don't have to have a huge list to get some wins here. Okay, so I'm going to go create new, and I'm going to say York County pre-foreclosure, 20% equity, and the date, so I know when I pull this. Happy Halloween, by the way.
Right. Halloween
I'm
is
not a
the best
huge,
time.
yeah. Listen, I'm not a huge Halloween guy, but I don't judge either. So, all right. So now I saved this list. Now, when you do that, you only get email and owner information, like owner name and so forth. I'm sorry, not email. You get mailing address and owner details. And if it's a non-owner occupied property, if they're an absentee owner, you get their mailing address, the property address, and name. Okay. So you can download the list as it is and send them direct mail. But I'm impatient. I love direct mail, but I want to see, can we get some quick results? And then, we can layer on direct mail with people that are maybe more responsive or have expressed interest or something like that. So if now that I've saved my list, if I go over to contacts, I've got the list here. Oh no, wait a minute. My properties. So it'll have your favorites, and you can favorite properties, specific listings, or whatever. And then you've got marketing lists over here. So if I scroll way down, because York is down at the end, I've got this list here of 127. Now, as I already mentioned, you've got address and you've got like owner information, and it'll have the APN number and that kind of stuff. But that's it. No email, no phone. Okay. But I want to be able to text. I want to be able to email. I want to be able to call. We want to see who we can get to raise their hand. So I'm going to go and click skip tracing. And I know I'm bouncing around here. I had a lot of coffee this morning. But if you try PropStream, they have a pre-foreclosure or a foreclosure like online course you can take. It literally takes like way under an hour. You can probably take it in like 30 to 45 minutes. They'll actually give you a $25 credit, $25 in credits that you can use towards skip tracing. So, and that'll get you about 200 skip traces or so. So you can check that out if you sign up. They'll let you know about it. And I think it was even on the login screen. So I go to skip trace. I'm going to select contacts. I'm going to say York. So I've got my 127 here. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? Well, it's not the end of the world. I forgot one filter that I like to use. So let me, actually, I am going to go back and do this real quick. I'm going to show you the one filter that I forgot because I think the filters, yeah, so it still has the filters saved. One that I forgot that I use in situations like this, in most situations, honestly, is to choose ownership info, individual. Because it's hard to reach the corporate and the mixed and the trust. So it only changed. Look, it only gave me one less contact. So I don't really care. But I don't want to, that would be best practice, at least in my experience, to choose just the individual owners. So I'm going to go here. We're going to get that list of 127. I click add selected contacts. I select all. I got to move my Zoom window here. So I've got all of them. I'm going to click next. And now for the grand total of $14.76, I am going to pay PropStream to append data to this, to get me email addresses, to get me phone numbers, and to scrub those numbers against the DNC. Now, the reality is you never actually pay what it's projected because there will be some contacts that they can't append data to for whatever reason, right? So this is like the most you'll pay when doing this step in the process. So I'm going to go ahead and click place order. This is just a little pop-up about the national do not call. It basically saying like, don't call the do not call people. We're scrubbing them. Well, it's saying two things, that they're absolving themselves of liability and you shouldn't reach out to them if they're on the DNC. So while this is happening, and honestly, for list sizes like this, you can get the appended data back in like minutes. Sometimes I've gotten them back like less than a minute. But while that's happening, I'll just bring up a campaign for what we do with the data once we have that back. Okay. So I'll give you an example. I'm using a white labeled version of Go High Level from a fellow by the name of Smarty. There's lots of versions, but this is a great one you can check out. There's a demo in that in the link, or I'm sorry, in the doc with the tech stack that I have. But you can replicate this. You can do something similar in KV Core if you so choose, or if you're using something else. Like there's lots of ways to get to the same end result. But I'll give you an example of the messaging that we're using, right? So what are we saying to these people once we get the appended data and we get them loaded up in here? Just gotta find. We've got a lot of workflows in here. Okay, so here's the pre-foreclosure. And we've got, some of them we have email and no phone. Some of them we have phone, no email. Some of them we have both. So we build these out so that we can hit them regardless. So for email, we just do a little 1-2 punch. We just do a little 1-2 punch. Okay. And the script is as follows. The subject line is their first name, question mark, Carrie, question mark. And then in parentheses, RE, colon, the street address. So not the full address, just the street address. The full address kind of looks like, I don't know. To me, that looks like scammier, spammier, whatever. And then we also do have, it's not in here, but I'll show in the template, there's how when you get an email on your phone, there's also like preview text. So you see the subject line and the preview text is like a second subject line. So we're very strategic about how we utilize that as well. And I can't remember off the top of my head what that script is, but I'll find it elsewhere where the template is for those that might be curious. And then the email itself is pretty straightforward. Now, notice I'm not saying, hey, it looks like your home's about to be sold at auction for foreclosure, right? Like, no, that's not the approach we're taking here. Okay. I'm not saying that can't work. It's just, I would rather take a more indirect approach. And in fact, the appointment that I had this morning, I have not brought up, and he hasn't brought up, why we're having this conversation, right? Like he has no idea. Or maybe he has an inclination that that's why I reached out, but I haven't referenced that. I reached out with an offer for him. And specifically, would you be opposed to an out-of-state client of ours making an offer on street address? Please let us know either way. Thanks, Josh. And then I've got my full signature. And then I merge in their full address and full email just because it customizes the email a little bit. And I don't know. I think it helps deliverability. To some degree. Now, the way we're doing, the out-of-state client making an offer, we use an offer option platform that we use to make good on that. But if you have a local investor client, or as long as you can make good on it in some way, shape, or form, and not be doing some kind of bait and switch, like that's the approach that I think it works best with this. And then about 6 hours later, we just send a follow-up email that just says, hey, I just making sure that you got my email. So nothing super fancy there. It's just like, hey, we sent you an email a little while ago, Carrie. It's about street address. If you could please hit reply and let me know. What we find is sometimes they don't get the first one, and then they get the second one, and then they reply and they say, well, yeah, I didn't see your first email. What was it about? Right? So that's the email 1-2 punch. The text. So we do a text and a ringless voicemail. Send out a text and a ringless voicemail. And the ringless voicemail, you can't make it personal to them, but I try to make it relevant. So for example, I'll say, like for that York County list, what I will say is something like this. Hey, my name is Josh. I'm a local realtor here with eXp Realty. I know this is out of the blue. Actually, I'll just play it here. You guys should probably be able to hear it, I think. Hey, this is Josh, a local realtor here in Cumberland County with eXp Realty. And I know this is a bit out of the blue and probably a long shot, but we have an out-of-state client who is looking for inventory here in Cumberland County. And so I'm wondering if you'd be at all open to entertaining offers for your property.
If you wouldn't mind letting us know either way, we would appreciate it. And you can call, text, or email back, whatever is most convenient for you. Thanks so much, and have a great day.
So obviously, if you're sending a ringless voicemail one-to-many, I can't reference their name or their address, etc. But I can make it relevant to the area. So like I pulled a whole county, but if you pull a city, I would say that, right? Whatever way you can make it more congruent to who you're sending to, I think it helps. But there's a point of diminishing returns there. Now, obviously, if you're also calling, well, then if you leave a voicemail, I would make it more specific. Hey, this is Josh. I'm a local realtor here with eXp Realty. I have an out-of-state client who I think would be interested in your property at blank address. Would you be at all open to entertaining offers on it? If you could let me know either way. And then the text message is, hey, Carrie, would you be opposed to our client purchasing your property at street address? Very direct. Now, for whatever reason, purchasing is less of a red flag as far as SMS filters than me saying, would you be opposed to selling your property, or could I make you an offer on your property? Certainly like cash offer, for whatever reason. Now that's a moving target, like the words that get flagged in text can be a bit of a moving target. But at least right now, purchase is a little less of a potential flag. So that's the initial workflow. And then we put them on an automated follow-up where they're getting every month, they get a link to their home value and cash offer options, et cetera. So like, you're only going to get a certain percentage of people that right then and there, but you want to have long-term follow-up and follow through for as you're adding data and as you're growing your database and your contact list. By now, I'm sure that the skip traced data is back, so we can take a look at that list now. Whoops. Nope. So contact. Once the data is skip traced, you go to contacts, and then you go to skip tracing, the second box there, and look at all of that. So we didn't have any of this data ahead of time, and now we've got all this data. Sometimes it's a little much, if I'm being
Right.
honest.
I was going to say that's a lot now.
But here's how I approach it. And I'm far from perfect, but as we enter this info and this data, we use automation. And I also commit, some days it's 2, some days it's 4 hours, some days it's 1. I mean, it depends on how busy, but I commit at each day to work my way through data, whether it's expired data or it's pre-foreclosure data or whatever. And the ones that I identify as, hey, I kind of add them to my hit list. Like, I'd really like this. I would have no problem calling all 4 of these numbers and saying, hey, I'm trying to reach Alexander. This number was showing up as being his. Do I have the right number or something like that? Like, he's got, I don't know how this guy's got 10 because he's got 4 in the cell phone, 4 in the landline, and then another 2 here. But what that often signals to me, though, too, is most people won't go through that work to find which number is the right number, right? So if you're the one, and I'll give you another analogy that maybe is impactful. I used to send a ton of direct mail, 2005, 6, 7. This is before I was licensed. I did wholesaling and I bought properties, et cetera. And some of the best opportunities from that came when I would get mail undelivered back to me, and I figured out how to get it delivered to the right address because I was the only one that was able to get the marketing message through to that person, because most other people, when they get it returned, they just put it in the circular file. So then we take this data, we clean out the DNCs, we remove all the do not call numbers so that we're not even touching those, and then we get it loaded up. Now, one benefit to using this version of Go High Level, or I'm sure other versions have it as well, is we can import multiple numbers and multiple emails and cycle through those to find what the good, the better data is. If you're using something else, you may have to do that manually, but again, it's probably worth it because most others aren't going to do that. That took me way longer just to get to that one than I expected. And I see Sandy has a question. So what I'll do is I would love to Sandy's question, and then I'll just give a couple of other use cases and examples a lot faster than what I did there.
Actually, it's Stacy.
Oh,
And
Stacey, I'm sorry.
no, you're good. Thanks, Carrie, for hosting this. I really appreciate it. I guess
Absolutely.
what I'm trying to figure out is obviously we can use it for foreclosure. I saw PropStream at one event and I was debating on whether to get it. So it sounds like you're using it as data collection for the different lists, right? So you can do foreclosure, and what else can you do? And how could I implement this in my business? I
Okay,
think,
so that was one very small use case. When I first started using it, we were pulling absentee owner data.
okay,
Because I think that's a great audience. And quite honestly, the reason why at that point was it was like in the middle of COVID, the pandemic. And I was like, I need people that could sell a property and not have to buy another one. Right? Because if it's absentee owned and they're just sick of being a landlord, like they don't have to buy another property. Now they may say, well, I don't really want to pay capital gains. I'd like the 1031, whatever. But just generally speaking, it's an easier yes if they're tired and ready to move forward. And the example that I gave, the fellow that I mentioned that on his free trial pulled 37, those were tired landlords. And there's a couple of different ways that you can pull the absentee owner data. But their quick list is just tired landlords. Now that'll give you a big list. So you want to layer on some other filters. So that would be an example where, let me see here. That would be an example where you definitely want to layer on like individual owner versus corporate, et cetera, because it's going to be a lot harder to track those down, right? So if I go tired landlords, individual owner in 17050, I've got 973. But let me say, I don't want them to be on the MLS. I want them to be a single family, and I want them to have, I don't know, 50% equity.
right. So
Now I've
this
got
is
227.
cool. I guess what I'm trying to figure out is we're all guilty realtors of buying technology that we don't use or we don't implement or anything like that. So give me
Yep.
a one-liner basic, what can I use PropStream for? It doesn't have to, you don't have to drill down to absentee owner or anything like that. But if I'm purchasing it, what could I use it for?
Okay. So niche lists. The second use case, which I was going to and am going to mention, is we have started every time we get a listing, and we're taking it a step farther even. Every time we get a result of some kind, for example, the appointment that I had this morning, I'm going to treat that almost like I would a listing and circle prospect around that appointment. So that way I pulled the list once, and if or when we get the listing, like I can continue to follow up with that audience to make a case why when they're ready to sell, they'll work with me, right? So and I'll well, I can give examples of this because this is gonna I'm already way more long-winded than I intended to be, but the workflow is similar. We send a text, we send an email, and we leave a ringless voicemail about whatever the result is. So if we just listed someone's property, if we're meeting with them about reviewing their equity and selling options, that's how we. I say that exact thing. Hey, we're meeting with your neighbor to review their equity and selling options. Do you is that something that you would be interested or know anyone else that would also like to blah blah blah, right? We launched one yesterday. I had a listing we put it in coming soon Tuesday. It went live this morning, and that one I didn't have time to get the list together before that, but I went in here, I pulled my list of I don't know, 100, 125, and did the same process. And it's just, hey, did you see what your neighbor did? Right? That kind of thing. It's just listed strategy, but more digitally. So the
Right.
niche lists, and then we use it for what I call more like demographic circle prospecting. So layering on filters to make sure that when you're doing the circle prospecting, they might be a little bit more motivated or have the ability to sell, or combination thereof.
Okay, so niche list and the demographic circle prospecting. So if I want foreclosures, is divorce in here too?
So it is. I will say that the divorce data is a little so
Wonky.
well, it will vary greatly depending on your market area. So like I can't get it in, I think it's all of Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
But I can't get it. It does have that as an option. It has bankruptcy as an option. Tax delinquencies, that can be a good one. That's another motivated. Well, I mean, look at this. This was unplanned, but I mean, that could be a good list, right? They're delinquent on taxes. Maybe they've got equity, and they're individually owned. They're not on the market, et cetera, et cetera. So the quick filters are a great fast way, but I think it's important to also layer on other filters, right?
So one last question. So
Yeah.
you pull a niche list for foreclosure like you just done, right? You take that niche list, the process is you take that niche list and you put it in your CRM. You put it in your CRM, then you also send out email marketing, whether that's done in your CRM or another email marketing platform.
Mhm.
As part of the process, you also send a ringless voicemail and make a phone call, correct?
It's trying to hit them on as many different media platforms as possible, with the communication. And I would say that we do use direct mail, but not in every case and not with every list, et cetera. But if it's a listing that I definitely want more in the neighborhood, well, we're going to layer on a direct mail, just listed, pending, and just sold postcard campaign as well, right? So then they're seeing me. It feels like I'm omnipresent, right? They may or may not have gotten my email. They may or may not have gotten my text message. They may or may not have gotten my ringless voicemail, and they may or may not, I mean, they most likely get the mail, but like I'm increasing the likelihood that they get something. And oh, by the way this CRM is set up, and you could do this manually, but the CRM is also set up to automatically create a custom audience, and we show up in their Facebook and Instagram if it's able to match them up there. So I'm showing up in their social feed, I'm showing up in their email inbox, their text inbox, their voicemail inbox, and their mailbox in a perfect world. Now, for most people, I'm not going to show up in all 5, but if I show up in 2 out of the 5, and they're thinking about selling or considering options, I'll give so most of this has been around the seller side, but I'll give you 2 ideas on the buyer side. Number 1 is you can pull cash buyers. So if you have a listing that would be ideal for an investor, you could pull a list of the cash buyers in your area, and you can filter, like you could pull a list of, okay, I want cash buyers in this area who have bought at least 2 properties in the last 12 months or 24 months or whatever you want to do. And then the other quick and easy way that I use this a lot is if I've got a client who is interested in a property, I'll pull up the data here because it's much more robust and there's a lot more than just sending them the MLS sheet. And so it's just a way that I can provide a little bit more value and information to those clients so that they feel like they're making an educated decision, right? So that they've got access to as much information and details. And in fact, let me just bear with me here. I have an out-of-town client, I'm not making this up, who wants me to go do a virtual, they're out of town, and they want me to go do a video tour of a property as soon as possible. And I forget the address, but I was going to pull it up, and I'm going to send this to them as well. I'm going to send them this, and then I'm going to go video the property for them. What is it? 2470 Zell. Yeah, it's just a great way for them to get a good idea. Is there value in it? What they can see comparable sales. And you literally just click a button. So this is the property. It is not snowy here. I don't know where those pictures, how old those pictures are. But I can go ahead and print it. Now, this is where you have to save the property. Because I showed at one point, like over here, contacts, saved properties, but I can just create a new group, and when I do this, I just call the saved group. It's just a group of 1 of that property. And then it'll download as a PDF eventually. And then I send that to them. And I might even include a video. Like I may get on video with Loom or Dub or BombBomb and say, hey, I wanted to send you this information too. It's a little bit more detailed. You can see the MLS data, but you can also check out a lot of other data. Like you can see the ownership history and listing history. And wow, this has, oh yeah, this is listing history of nearby listings, etc. These are some old images, right? So like, it's just another way for you to deepen that relationship. I especially like to do that with out of town buyers because or buyers that are like they think they want to see everything, right? So I try to use what information I have on my laptop to get them to disqualify properties rather than us having to go in person to disqualify it, right? We're looking for, if they got these 10 that they like, okay, well, let me send you more information on these so that we can narrow it down to maybe 2 or 3 for you. So we're not wasting your time and mine.
Absolutely. This is fantastic.
Kelly asked, do you always have actual end buyers? If not, what's your process for finding those buyers and quickly to deliver? So if I'm making an offer to pre-foreclosures or absentee, et cetera, like you don't bait and switch them. Now, would you be open to entertaining offers on your property at blank address? Well, what's the best way for them to be open? What's the best way for them to entertain offers? Well, it's to list the property on the open market, right? So you don't have to say, I have a buyer, but if you do, I think it's more powerful. And the more specific you can be about it. Oh, so here's one other use case. I'm sorry. I don't know how long these normally go, Carrie, but here's one other use case. So, I went and looked at a property yesterday. Okay. I went and looked at a property yesterday where I pulled a list. So those same buyers that I mentioned that are interested in this property, they had very specific buying criteria. There were 4 cities. And again, I'm in a rural area. So it's not like, we're not talking like Philadelphia, like this, each city has a population of like 25,000. So 4 small cities, all in a little cluster. They want a pool. There's like 3 in their price range on the market right now that have a pool. And they had, they have their price range, 500 to 900,000, et cetera. So I went and I pulled a list for them and I launched a workflow like I described. And in that case, I was very specific. I have a client, his name is Dr. John Scooper, who is interested in buying a home like yours. And in the email, you can be more detailed than you can in the text, right? You got to be punchy in the text. But I told their story. So the more relevant you can make it, the better. But if you don't have a buyer, if you don't have a way to do that, just, would you be open to entertaining offers on your property at blank address? Well, I might be. Do you have a buyer? Well, I might. But if you want to, if you want our help to get you multiple offers and help you negotiate the most net, here's what we should do, right? Is that Isabel?
Yes, Josh, I have a question. Can you filter by expired luxury?
Okay, so I will say this. They have what they called failed listings. And it probably varies by market. It's not the greatest. Okay, so you asked, I want to show you, but just know that it's not foolproof. Okay, but let's go. I'll say I'll just pull the whole county. I'll do Cumberland
When you say
County.
it's not foolproof, what is it, Josh, that's not foolproof about it?
We've found some that even though I selected not on market, they're on market. Or it said that they failed and haven't sold, but they actually have, right? But like, I don't know.
Gotcha.
I don't think there's a perfect way to do it because I've also paid data providers that specifically provide expired data, and their data's jacked up. In fact, I had 2 this morning that it said they were expired, but the home sold 32 days ago. So
Gotcha.
nothing is perfect, but I kind of wanted to get out in front of that, I guess. So, so we're choosing the whole county. We're going to go not on market. Okay. Always not on market. We've got individual already selected and single family because we're going after luxury. Okay. MLS status. Okay. MLS status. I'm going to choose failed. And if we're going to do this, and especially when you've got, I would say like a very specific type of home that we're looking for, I would go back, you might go back several years for this data. So, I'm going to go back to January 1st, and I'm going to back it up. I don't want the fresh data is where it can get a little, murky, I think. So I'm going to say I want the failed listings from January 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 2024 that are single family, not on the market, individually owned in Cumberland County. And now I want to do a couple other things to help, hopefully help ensure that we're getting good data. Ownership info. I'm going to say that they have a minimum of 2 years ownership. So hopefully, now look at that. So that clipped off, it's hard to see that, but that clipped off 50. So that tells me that 50 of these actually did sell, even though they're showing as failed listings, because whoever owns it has now owned it for less than 2 years. Okay. So I've got 82 now, and now you said luxury. Well, the definition of luxury is going to vary by market, but I'll tell you what luxury is in my market, generally speaking. If I go to valuation and info, I can say estimated value. I can say whatever I want. I'll say 750,000 to a max of whatever. Look at that. There's only one. Let's go 500,000. There's 14. Now here's the thing. Here's the nice thing when you get a list like this. Like, if you had a client that was legitimately interested in those, wouldn't you do everything possible, right? You'd probably call every one of the numbers. You'd probably email every one of the emails. You might send them, you might not just send them direct mail. You might send them a handwritten letter, right? So there's pluses and minuses for more data versus less data. But I will say that, there's a lot to be said for less data and going deeper with that data, right? An inch wide and a mile deep versus a mile wide and an inch deep. Hope that helps, Isabel.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much, Josh.
Of course, of course. Arthur, you always have to scrub your list. None will be 100% correct. Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's the reality. And so the other nice thing about a small list like this is you might, before you start investing time, let's say I'm going to reach out to 506 Francis Drive. I'm going to make sure that it hasn't changed hands, that it hasn't been listed, etc. And then, I'm like a dog on a bone. I'm gonna track them down, no matter what, and until or unless they tell me go away, we're never moving. Which I had one of those this morning. I had somebody call me back on a just listed workflow. We're never living. This is our forever home. We're gonna die here. Hey, more power to you. We were just trying to do our job. No pressure or hassle whatsoever. Best wishes, right? And delete them out of the system and move on to the next one.
No, this was amazing. Does anyone have any other questions before we hop off? Nobody? Well, thanks so much, Josh, for coming on.
Actually, I got one quick one. Josh, do you keep them on like a weekly email newsletter or anything like that, or do you have any
so
kind of
anyone, unless they, obviously unless they unsubscribe, they get a monthly email that has an updated market value and offer options. We use a platform called iList, right? The email is sent through the CRM that I showed you, but where they can go and access their dashboard and get value, that's what we use. There's lots of options for it, right? Like some of you might use HomeBot, some of you might use forget what the others are. You might use maybe like KV Core has a value page. Like there's any number of ways that you can do that. But I send that monthly, and then I will, generally speaking, send one more lead generation communication per month. In other words, like the one is informational, it kind of just helps you create and stay top of mind. But the other message, I want to see, who's more ready, willing, and able right now And if I can find it, I can share the one that I sent out today. Actually, I stole it from Chris Waters. If you know who Chris Waters is, with permission. I think Frank Klesitz over at Viral had sent it at some point, and I had I tweaked it a little bit and sent it out. Quite honestly, I haven't really gotten any takers on it, but you know, I used it nonetheless. Here is that message. Get multiple offer options for your home at street address instantly. Skip the hassle of a traditional sale. Pick your closing date without the stress, blah, blah, blah. Tap here to check out the unique and exclusive options we have available for you. And then you can see, you know, there's the rest of this here. Sometimes they're long like this. Sometimes it's short and sweet. Hey, you know, I know you, well, there's lots of different ways that you can do it, right? Do you want more conversations, or do you just want the ones that are, you know, red hot and ready to go, right? So you got to pick and choose, but those at a minimum, they're going to get those 2 emails per month, a more lead gen specific one, and the, you know, their updated value and offer options. And then generally speaking, we'll send at least a text message a month to try and see, you know, to try and get some hand raisers. Now, in addition to that, you know, if we've got a buyer who's looking and we pull up their home, I might reach out personally and say, hey, we're going to be in the neighborhood. You know, are you guys thinking about selling? Have you heard anybody in the neighborhood thinking about selling? Right. But as far as the automated or like the sort of regular cadence, that's what we do monthly.
I like it. Anyone else? Any other questions? No? Well, thank you again, Josh, for being here. I will put the recording in the group later today. And I guess if you guys need anything from me or Josh, reach out. We're definitely here.
Yeah, you can find me on, you know, I'm not hard to find. You can find me on socials. You can, however or whatever I can do to help, I'm happy to do so. So hit me up if you have questions or you want, you know, some of the scripts or anything along those lines.
Yes, well, thank you so much and happy Halloween, everybody. I will see you next weekend.
Thanks, Carrie.
Bye.